DIY wooden garden wall art transforms small spaces into stylish outdoor retreats. When we speak of compact living in today's world, we are not merely addressing the dimensions of our homes or the limitations of square footage. We are, in fact, exploring a new philosophy of space, one where every corner has the potential to become meaningful, where every surface can transform into an expression of personal vision. In this context, the outdoor realm, whether a modest patio, a narrow balcony, or a small backyard, emerges as a sanctuary. These spaces, no matter how limited, hold the promise of retreat, of communion with nature, of shared conversations under open skies. Yet the true challenge lies not in recognizing their value, but in designing them with both style and function, without sacrificing intimacy or authenticity. This is where the art of wooden design reveals itself as a profound solution. Wooden elements carry a resonance of timelessness, a material deeply rooted in nature and memory. To bring wood into these compact outdoor spaces is not merely to decorate, but to connect between the organic and the crafted, the practical and the poetic. And when such design is approached through a do-it-yourself lens, it transcends the generic. It becomes a statement of individuality, a canvas for personal creativity, a story carved in grain and texture. Wooden garden wall art, in its essence, is not simply decoration. It is architecture for the vertical plane, an invitation to rethink the blankness of fences, walls or corners as opportunities for transformation. Consider for a moment the untouched wall at the edge of a patio, the flat surface of a fence, or a neglected boundary between property and nature. Traditionally, these are overlooked, dismissed as mere peripheries. But to an architect, they are stages awaiting performance. Through simple wooden installations, crafted, reclaimed, or newly envisioned, these surfaces become focal points. They capture attention, direct the eye, and frame experiences. Unlike standardized decor purchased from a store, such interventions hold authenticity. They bear the maker's fingerprint, the subtle imperfections that narrate effort and care. In this lies their deeper intimacy. The garden ceases to be a generic outdoor room and begins to mirror the identity of its inhabitants. Among the most compelling strategies in this realm is the vertical planter wall. Imagine wooden pallets or reclaimed boards rising against a once blank surface. Each board supports a vessel of green, herbs sprouting with fragrance, succulents offering sculptural resilience, flowers spilling bursts of color into the air. In such a composition, greenery ascends to eye level, surrounding us not only with life but with an immersive experience. Ground space, so precious in small backyards, remains unencumbered. Instead, the garden expands upward, its lushness magnified, its vitality concentrated. This is more than efficiency, it is artistry aligned with ecology. It redefines limitation as opportunity. Equally evocative is the geometry of wood in its purest form. Slats arranged in chevron, herringbone or diamond-shaped patterns introduce rhythm and order. These configurations, born of simple repetition, speak both of modernity and tradition. They honor the rustic essence of natural material while simultaneously embracing the clarity of contemporary design. In their arrangement, shadows shift with the sun, light dances across angled surfaces, and the wall becomes dynamic. Should one choose to leave the wood bare, its natural tones resonate with warmth. Should one choose to stain or paint, earthy hues harmonize with the garden's palette. In either choice, the result is not decoration alone but spatial narrative, a dialogue between form, texture and time. Yet design, in my vision, must never sacrifice utility for beauty. The most meaningful interventions are those where art and function coalesce. Picture a wooden lattice, elegant in form, but also serving as a trellis where climbing plants weave their living patterns. Or imagine a panel structured with hooks and ledges, offering places for lanterns, garden tools, or seasonal ornaments. Such panels do not merely conceal, they organize, they enhance, they declutter. They embody a philosophy where every component of the outdoor space has dual purpose, where even privacy screens transcend their role as barriers and transform into sculptural backdrops for gatherings. The wall becomes stage, backdrop, and framework for living. Integral to this movement is sustainability. In the practice of architecture, we often speak of material honesty, of respecting the origins and life cycles of what we build. Wooden garden wall art, particularly when constructed from reclaimed timber, reflects this ethos. The board once part of a shipping pallet, the beam salvaged from a renovation, the offcut forgotten in storage, all can be reborn as features of the garden. Their surfaces, when sanded or stained, reveal histories etched in grain and imperfection. Each knot, each variation, whispers a narrative of time. And in this reuse lies not only ecological mindfulness, but also aesthetic depth. The rustic becomes authentic, and authenticity resonates more deeply than perfection ever could. Light, too, is an indispensable partner in this architecture. Wooden structures, when paired with illumination, acquire an entirely new dimension. Picture LED string lights woven along a wooden frame, solar lanterns suspended from slats, or discrete uplighting casting warm shadows across textured surfaces. In the evening, the wood glows. The garden shifts from day's retreat to night's sanctuary. This is where conversations linger longer, where solitude deepens into reflection. Light accentuates grain, defines geometry, and imbues the wall with quiet magic. The smallest patio, under such conditions, transcends its scale and becomes atmosphere, becomes theatre. In spaces where dimensions constrain ambition, even the simplest wooden gestures matter. A frame upon the wall, hosting potted plants, jars, or art inspired by nature, animates a forgotten corner. Wooden shelves, modest yet deliberate, extend surfaces for candles, small sculptures, or cascading greenery. These additions, though restrained, alter perception. They remind us that intimacy is not measured by size but by intentionality. A single corner, thoughtfully composed, radiates more vitality than an entire yard left unconsidered. What ultimately distinguishes these wooden interventions is the human hand. To build, to craft, to install, these acts connect us to the space in ways that passive consumption never can. They invite experimentation, season after season, iteration upon iteration. They encourage us to design not only with vision but with heart. Each project becomes both a creation and a meditation, a way to shape environment while being shaped by the process itself. Thus, wooden garden wall art is not a trend, nor is it a mere embellishment. It is a design philosophy accessible to all, a means to cultivate beauty, purpose, and identity in outdoor spaces, no matter their scale. From planter walls to geometric patterns, from functional panels to illuminated features, the possibilities are boundless. And as with all meaningful architecture, the result is not only what we see, but what we feel. A sanctuary crafted of wood, light, and intention. It is a celebration of craftsmanship, sustainability, and personal expression. A reminder that design at its most profound transforms not only our surroundings, but ourselves. When I envision the continuation of this exploration, I see not just walls and wood, but the orchestration of experience. Every outdoor space, however limited, holds the potential to carry the weight of atmosphere, to invite stories, to become a stage for memory. As an architect, I do not simply design objects, I compose relationships between material and light, between human and environment, between function and beauty. In compact outdoor living, these relationships must be distilled to their purest form because every inch carries consequence. Wooden garden wall art, in its multiplicity of expressions, allows us to navigate these constraints with imagination and dignity. One of the most powerful aspects of design lies in its ability to reframe perception. A small backyard by its dimensions may seem ordinary, but once vertical space is animated with wooden interventions, the boundaries dissolve. What was once a blank fence becomes a living wall, a textured surface that draws the gaze upward and outward, extending the sense of space beyond its actual measurements. This optical expansion is as much psychological as it is physical. By occupying the vertical plane with rhythm, pattern, and greenery, we free the ground plane to remain uncluttered, fluid, and open. The result is balance, intimacy without confinement, vibrancy without chaos. Geometry continues to play a central role in this vision. The disciplined repetition of shapes provides order to compact spaces, establishing coherence where clutter might otherwise reign. A chevron pattern crafted from reclaimed slats introduces motion, as though the wall itself were flowing. A herringbone composition grounds the space with a sense of craft and permanence. while diamond motifs add both symmetry and surprise. These designs do more than please the eye. They create anchors in the environment. They guide orientation, they structure the way we inhabit the garden, and they root even the smallest patio in an aesthetic framework that feels intentional and designed. Yet design is not only for the eyes. A well-considered outdoor environment must engage the senses more holistically. The tactile quality of wood, the grain beneath the fingertips, the roughness of reclaimed planks, the smoothness of sanded edges reminds us that materials carry memory. The scent of freshly cut timber or the earthy aroma of weathered boards adds invisible layers of experience. Sound too participates, the rustle of leaves against wooden trellises, the gentle creak of a hanging planter, the resonance of footsteps on wooden decking. All these elements converge to create an environment where being is not passive, but immersive. Wooden wall art, in this sense, is an invitation to live through every sense, to rediscover the tactile and ephemeral in an age dominated by the virtual. Sustainability, meanwhile, is no longer an afterthought. In contemporary design, it is central. The reuse of pallets, offcuts and salvaged boards speaks not only to ecological responsibility but also to cultural narrative. Each reclaimed piece of wood carries a history, a journey from tree to beam, from structure to scrap, now reborn as art. This act of transformation is itself poetic, turning what might have been discarded into something celebrated. The imperfections of reclaimed wood, its cracks, its variations, its uneven tones, are not flaws but signatures. They remind us that nature resists uniformity and that beauty often resides in irregularity. In this way, sustainable practice aligns seamlessly with aesthetic vision, creating designs that feel grounded, authentic, and enduring. Lighting deserves renewed emphasis here, for it is the element that turns architecture into atmosphere. The interplay between wood and light is particularly powerful. Wood, with its organic warmth, absorbs and reflects light in subtle ways. When illuminated by string lights, the slats glow softly, their textures heightened, their shadows deepened. Solar-powered lanterns hung strategically punctuate the vertical garden with gentle accents, marking places for gathering or quiet retreat. Hidden uplights create dramatic contrasts, revealing depth and dimension otherwise unseen. In compact spaces, light is both necessity and art. It allows the garden to transcend the cycles of day and night, extending its life into evening hours where stories are shared and silence is savoured. There is also great value in multifunctionality, particularly when working within spatial limitations. A wooden privacy screen is not simply a barrier, it becomes a canvas for design. A trellis is not merely support for climbing plants, it becomes sculpture. A wall-mounted panel with hooks may store tools, yet in its design it reads as composition. In this fusion of art and utility lies the highest efficiency. Nothing is wasted and every piece contributes simultaneously to order and beauty. This is the architecture of compact living, purposeful, layered, and graceful. For smaller patios, subtlety often achieves the greatest impact. A modest wooden frame showcasing a collection of potted plants can define a corner, offering a moment of charm that feels personal and curated. Shelves affixed to walls create opportunities for display, candles flickering in glass jars, cascading vines softening the rigidity of planks, small sculptures adding hints of personality. In these details, intimacy emerges. One does not need grandeur to create resonance. One needs intentionality, proportion, and rhythm. The design process itself is as important as the final product. Engaging in do-it-yourself construction transforms the homeowner into both creator and curator of their space. This participation bridges the divide between architecture and inhabitant. The act of measuring, cutting, sanding, and assembling is more than manual labor. It is a ritual of engagement. It fosters attachment, pride, and an evolving relationship with the space. Over time, the ability to adjust, repaint, or reconfigure ensures that the garden remains dynamic, reflecting the changing seasons of both nature and life. When seen through this lens, wooden garden wall art becomes more than a project, it becomes an embodiment of values: creativity, sustainability, craftsmanship, and intimacy. Each installation speaks of effort and vision. Each design carries the identity of its maker. Each composition enriches the collective experience of those who inhabit the space. In compact outdoor living, these values converge into something profound. the transformation of limitation into liberation. A small patio no longer feels constrained but curated. A backyard no longer feels inadequate but intentional. Thus, the narrative of wooden design extends beyond the physical. It touches on the psychological and emotional, reshaping how we perceive space and how we connect with it. To design with wood is to acknowledge both heritage and innovation, both nature and craft. It is to stand at the intersection of art and architecture, creating environments that not only serve function but also inspire feeling. And in these intimate sanctuaries, crafted from slats, patterns and light, we discover that architecture need not be monumental to be meaningful. It need only be thoughtful, intentional and resonant. As I bring this vision to its culmination, I see wooden garden wall art not as an isolated gesture, but as part of a larger architectural dialogue, a dialogue about how we inhabit small spaces, how we honor nature within boundaries, and how we express identity through craft. In compact living, design must be distilled, precise, and purposeful. Every choice of material, pattern, or proportion becomes magnified. And it is here that wood, with its timeless resonance, provides a language that is both universal and deeply personal. The wall, so often regarded as a background, transforms into the central protagonist of this dialogue. It is not merely the edge of a garden, but the frame of experience, the canvas upon which atmosphere is painted. By animating this surface with wood, we shift perception. The wall no longer closes space, it opens possibility. It becomes alive with rhythm, texture, and narrative. Verticality redefines horizontality, and the garden expands without expanding. In this way, wood elevates the ordinary into the extraordinary, proving that design is not bound by size but liberated by intention. Consider again the variety of expressions that emerge from this approach. A vertical garden, rising like a living tapestry, becomes both artwork and ecosystem. Herbs, succulents, and flowers coalesce into a composition that evolves with seasons, providing not only aesthetic delight but also fragrance, nourishment, and ecological richness. A geometric installation, carved from slats of reclaimed timber, creates order and visual interest, capturing shifting light and shadow as the day unfolds. A functional panel, serving simultaneously as trellis, tool rack, and lantern holder, embodies the philosophy that beauty and utility are not opposing forces but twin aspects of thoughtful design. Each of these interventions, though distinct, speaks the same architectural language, one of balance, creativity, and humanity. The experience of such spaces is not confined to daytime. Light, when choreographed with wood, reveals an entirely different character at night. Evening settles, shadows stretch, and the illuminated panels radiate warmth. What once was surface becomes sculpture, glowing softly, inviting gathering and reflection. In this atmosphere, the garden ceases to be exterior. It becomes an extension of home, a room without ceiling, open to the sky. For small patios especially, this transition is transformative. A modest corner acquires the intimacy of a retreat, a place where stories are told, where solitude becomes comfort rather than confinement. Equally vital is the narrative of sustainability woven through these designs. In an age where consumption often outpaces mindfulness, the act of reclaiming and repurposing wood carries profound resonance. Each plank salvaged, each board renewed, embodies a commitment not only to ecology, but to storytelling. These materials, marked by grain and imperfection, carry memory. They remind us that design need not erase the past, but can honor it, integrating fragments of history into present expression. The wall, in this sense, becomes a palimpsest, layered with meaning, bridging what was and what is, anchoring us in continuity. What resonates most, however, is the human dimension. To build with one's own hands, to craft and assemble, is to reclaim agency in a world of prefabrication. The homeowner becomes not just occupant, but author of the space. Each cut, each nail, each brushstroke of stain is a line in a personal narrative. The wall becomes autobiography, written not in words, but in wood and form. This intimacy cannot be purchased, it must be made. And in the act of making, we rediscover a bond with our surroundings, a deeper sense of belonging to the spaces we shape. Design is also a process of evolution. A wooden panel today may hold herbs, tomorrow it may display lanterns. A trellis that begins with ivy may later host jasmine or roses. Paint fades, surfaces weather, patterns shift, and in each change, the garden reflects both time and care. This mutability is not weakness, but strength. It ensures that the space remains alive, dynamic, responsive. It adapts to seasons, to moods, to new ideas, embodying the truth that design is never finished, but always in dialogue with life. From an architectural standpoint, wooden garden wall art teaches us broader lessons. It reminds us that design is not about scale, but about intent. A small backyard can contain as much meaning as a vast estate if treated with imagination. It reminds us that materials carry voices, that wood whispers of forests and growth, of endurance and renewal. It reminds us that sustainability is not constraint, but opportunity, enriching design rather than limiting it. Most of all, it reminds us that spaces are not defined solely by walls, floors, and ceilings, but by the relationships we cultivate within them. Ultimately, the transformation of small outdoor areas through wooden design is a metaphor for how we might live more fully in the world. It is about recognizing potential where others see limitation, about crafting beauty from simplicity, about weaving functionality with art. A blank fence becomes a sanctuary wall. A dull patio corner becomes a gallery of greenery. A modest backyard becomes a retreat of character and soul. These are not mere aesthetic changes. They are shifts in how we perceive and inhabit space, in how we connect with nature, in how we express ourselves within the framework of our homes. This is why, when I speak of DIY wooden garden wall art, I speak not of hobby but of architecture. Not in the monumental sense, but in the intimate one, the architecture of daily life, of personal sanctuaries, of crafted atmospheres. It is a discipline of thought as much as of hand, a practice that binds creativity, sustainability, and identity into a coherent whole. And so when we look at these compact spaces, these patios, balconies, and backyards, we must see them not as constraints, but as canvases. Every wooden slat, every reclaimed board, every geometric pattern is a stroke upon this canvas. Every planter, every shelf, every illuminated frame is part of the composition. Together they form not only gardens but stories, not only retreats but expressions of life. This is the power of design, to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, to turn walls into statements, to shape environments that are both stylish and soulful. And in doing so, to remind us that architecture at its heart is not about structures alone, but about the human spirit that animates them.